really strong.
And they should, because for you guys to see the characters, we have to see them. We have to see these images on the page much more clearly than you do. You moved from Greek mythology now into Egyptian mythology, a sort of natural link out of the top. Tell us how that happened.
Right, Egypt. Well, as I was touring around for Percy Jackson, the idea came from young readers all around the country, all around the UK. They would say, we love the Greek mythology, what are you going to do next? Are you ever going to do another sort of mythology? And as you well know, I mean, you are such a master at mixing different mythologies and taking elements from so many great traditions. There's so much to choose from. But that was my big dilemma, is, well, okay, what do I do next? And I thought about it, and when I was a classroom teacher, the only thing that came close to Greek mythology in terms of the enthusiasm that the students had was Egypt. Everybody loved Egypt. The mummies, the hieroglyphs, the pyramids. It's a fascinating ancient culture, but very few people know anything about its mythology. And there's some fascinating stories there that have kind of been forgotten or never really taught. So I thought it would be a great challenge to sort of do a Percy Jackson type spin on ancient Egypt and see if I could introduce some of these lesser known gods to the modern world. So it was a great challenge, and I started doing research. I found out about the House of Life, the oldest school of magic in the world. And I couldn't believe no one had really, sort of done a novel about the House of Life before. So that's where I got the idea of magicians battling gods, and Kane Chronicles was born out of that.
That's been astonishingly successful. And this is now a new thread for you. So you have your Egyptian thread, you have your Egyptian thread. What's next? What other mythologies do you want to use the right thread?
Well, I think you've covered the basics. I'm working up my courage. People ask, will you ever throw the Canes and the demigods into one book? And that's, you're the guy that's better at that. You're much better at mixing mythology. I'm going to have to get up my courage to see if I can do a book that mixes them. I think that would be very fun to do. But that's down the line. The next thing coming up for me is actually a return to Camp Half-Blood. There's a new series. I'm really excited about it. It's called The Heroes of Olympus. The first book, The Lost Hero, will be out October 12th. It's been so much fun, and I've had to be careful not to say too much and not to spoil anything. Because, the natural inclination, of course, if you've read the Percy Jackson books and you enjoy them, people say, well, where's book 6? Where's book 6? And I had to say, well, I'm not really doing a book 6. There's a whole different series. It's Percy Jackson's world, but there's a new spin on it. Why did I do that? Because I didn't want to be writing Percy Jackson 27, like 15 years from now, because I think we've all read series that went on too long, and the author got tired of them, and you can sort of tell that the quality went down. I never wanted that to happen, so I wanted Percy Jackson to have a really nice, solid ending. But I also wanted to keep exploring his world. And so in the Heroes of Olympus, we have a new set of demigods that are taking on the story. And if you've read The Last Olympian, or if you haven't, I don't think I'm giving much away to say there's a prophecy at the end that sets up the next series. But you're also going to see Percy. You're also going to see what's happening with all the old characters. They're there. It's just going to be a slightly different take. And if you want to check it out, you haven't yet, there's a great website that Disney's doing for the book. It's camphalfblood.com. And if you go there and just type in New Hero, one word, you can read the first 2 chapters. And you'll see where it's going.
Let's talk about the 39 clues for a second. Tell me how that came about.
39 Clues, very interesting project. It wasn't like anything that I'd ever done before. Scholastic Books actually contacted me and they said, well, we have this idea, but we don't have anybody to write it. Would you be interested in taking it on? I said, well, I've never really done anything like that before, but what have you got in mind? And they described this premise about the Cahill family who discovered that every character for the last 500 years, every historical figure of importance is related in one huge family. And I thought, that's kind of an interesting idea. And you have to find out the secret of the Cahill power. And to do that, they have to go on this hunt for the 39 clues. As a history teacher, I thought this was a neat idea for making history fun, making it interesting. So I agreed to do the first book, The Maze and Bones, and it was really successful. And they had a team of authors We talked about me trying to do all 10 books, but they wanted to do a book like every 3 months. And there was just no way that I or anybody else could write 10 books 3 months apart and do all of them. But it worked out very, very well. The other authors who were involved did a tremendous job. And it's coming up on book 10 now, Into the Gauntlet.
Did you create the overall story arc?
I did. I sat down and did a really rough sketch of where the story should go, and it has changed. But basically, I took my greatest hits from my classroom, the units around the world that kids like the most. Pirates in the Caribbean, ancient feudal Japan, ancient Egypt is there. All these great characters, Benjamin Franklin for colonial America. And I just made those sort of the touchstones for each book. And the authors took it from there and just kept the characters going.
You were a teacher for a very long time. You've recently given it up. Folklore is not taught so much in schools. Talk to me about that for a moment. How important is folklore in an educational system?
I think it's critical. I think that when we don't teach folklore, we're not teaching a huge part of our cultural heritage. This is where the great stories come from. They started as the oral tradition, all the way back to Homer. Those stories were not written down for a long, long time. And finally, they were sort of cemented in a text. But these started out as stories people were telling each other at home, around the hearth, around the campfire. And that's true for just about every culture there is. I think when we lose that tradition of storytelling, we lose a lot of our connection to the roots of literature. And the more you know about mythology, the more you recognize these kind of archetypes in books. Like when people talk about the hero, say Harry Potter, they say, well, the books are kind of similar because you have a character who discovers he's special, and he has these abilities that he didn't realize, and he has to get trained. And they say, well, did you get that from Harry Potter? And I said, well, no, actually, I got that from Hercules, which is about 3,000 years earlier than Harry Potter's a wonderful example of that archetype. It's a great story, but it's not a new story. It's a pattern that we have repeated in literature for thousands, literally, of years.
And of course, what's true with mythology is that stories are the same no matter where you go in the country, no matter where you go in the world. The story I always use as an example is that in ancient Ireland there's the story of the children of Lear, L-I-R. 4 children changed into swans. In China it's 4 children changed into dragons. In India 4 children changed into tigers. And in Inuit folklore changed into polar bears. Same story, same transformation of legend. That's the power of mythology. And we're not teaching it in schools. And you look at America, which has probably some of the best folklore in the world. But sadly, it's just not taught. Isn't well known.
Absolutely. And when you talk about how the patterns are similar from culture to culture, that really does tell you a lot about human nature and how our minds work, that independently, so many cultures have come up with the same sort of archetypes, the hero's journey. You see it over and over and over. And part of it probably is the cultures we're talking to each other, but a lot of it is that we just are naturally attracted to that sort of pattern and kind of story. People have the same
I'm going to throw this open to the floor at a moment because I know some of you may have a question or two. Let me ask you now what you're working on at the moment.
Right now, I have finished up with Lost Hero, which, as I said, is the first book in Heroes of Olympus, and I'm working on